So over the years, I've heard a lot of talk about ringed irises and how looking at emu, this could be a sign of possession, because many people, myself included, think that emu is now living in the body of Nefertiti D. Lily. However, I think there's a sillier caveat to that, and we'll get to that in a second. However, the ringed irises that you see on certain characters, I don't think has anything to do with possession itself. Of the characters who have ring irises, we have Caribou, Dracula Mihawk, his clone S-Hawk, and of course, Nerona Emu. With that being said, there is another character, or I guess characters, who are known for having ringed irises. And those are a species of Dendemushi who are visual Dendemushi, namely the projector Dendemushi and the Proco variant of the surveillance Dendemushi. They have ringed irises as well. So this leads me to believe that the ringed irises perhaps are a mutation that allows an individual to gain the power of projection in one way or another. Based on the nature of Dendemushis, they can project images, right? But when it comes to people, I think things get a little more interesting, because in Marineford, there is this very curious scene in which Luffy goes to attack Mihawk. Mind you, this is before Luffy knew anything about hockey, but he attacks Mihawk with Gum Gum Jet Bazooka. However, before he can launch the attack, we have a shot of Mihawk's eye specifically. Then there is a shot of Luffy's eyes going white as he sees what could possibly happen to his arms if he attacks Mihawk, in which he sees his arms being severed. I think Mihawk projected the image of what would happen to Luffy if he decided to attack him. I think this ability of his could be a variation of observation hockey, in which he can project what his intent is to his opponent before they do anything. So in a way, it's kind of giving an individual outside of yourself the ability of future sight. Instead of seeing what your opponent is going to do, you give them a warning of what you're about to do to them, if that makes sense. I think this ability is then extended to Nerona Emu, in which perhaps they can see long distances or perhaps all over the world, and then use their perhaps Devil Fruit powers, in which they can send people with the Mark of the Abyss via Magic Circle to different locations. This long range sight ability too seems to be demonstrated by Mihawk, because it's implied that from his home in the Muggy Kingdom, he can see what's going on at the Levelly. At least that's the implication. I'm not too sure about that, but that's what seems to be going on. So not only can they project visions into the heads of others, but perhaps using this observation hockey variant, they can see across vast distances and pinpoint where they want to look at, or where they want their vision to be. In a way, kind of like the powers of the Glare fruit held by Viola, or how Eniru's setup was, in which he could use his observation hockey in conjunction with the abilities of the Rumble fruit, in which he could pinpoint and zap anyone on the island. But it's a natural ability instead of being a power of a Devil Fruit. With that being said, the reason why I think Nerona Emu has these ringed irises, even if they have been body swapped, is because based on how body swapping is conducted by the powers of the Op fruit, we see, and this could just be a visual gag, but I'm inclined to think that it's not. In Punk Hazard, when Law switches the bodies and souls of multiple Straw Hats, the one defining factor of how you can tell who is actually who is by the character's eyes. When Chopper is in Sanji's body has Chopper's eyes. When Sanji is in Nami's body, her eyes change from the amber or brown that they usually are to blue, which means Sanji's eyes are naturally blue. Then when you look at when Nami was in Frankie's body had the brown girly eyes that Nami is known for. So with that being said, I'm inclined to believe that perhaps this wasn't a visual gag, and the reason why Nerone Emu still retains those ringed irises is because of the power of the op fruit just giving you the eyes of the original soul, even when it's being put into a foreign body. At least that's what I think, because you can mark that off as a visual gag, but seeing as how it's so consistent throughout all the characters who were affected by it, I'm less inclined to believe that to be true. But also, and this is just a fun fact to keep in mind, as we see from Sanji in Nami's body, he is still able to use Haki, because Haki, unlike devil fruits, are linked to the soul, at least in most cases. I don't know about Brook and Big Mom, but in most cases, Haki is linked to the soul of the individual, whereas devil fruits are linked to the body. And we see this with Frankie and Chopper, because once Frankie was in Chopper's body, he was very giddy to become Monster Chopper as soon as possible. So I just wanted to make that clear. Haki is tied to the soul, whereas devil fruits are tied to the body, at least in most cases. Again, with Brook and Big Mom, it could be different, but continuing. So I do think ringed irises give people the ability to see far beyond what is deemed natural. Perhaps this too is due to highly developed observation Haki, or it inclines the individual to have that type of observation Haki. And then two, it allows those people to project the image of what they're about to do within the head of their opponent. Now, as far as Caribou is concerned, I think it's interesting that he is now a part of Blackbeard's entourage. So if he does have any of these supposed abilities, I think Blackbeard would be very interested in him and perhaps help him to learn his true potential moving forward in the future as a tool for himself. I think that's very possible. With that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede. What's it?